Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Shayna Humphreys. Tonight we take a closer look at Detroit police and crime in the city. In just a moment, we'll be joined by Chief James White. But first, in case you missed it, the department shared some rather encouraging news yesterday that crime is down in the city. Detroit recorded 252 homicides in 2023. That's down from 309 in 2022. That is the lowest it has been since 1966. Non-fatal shootings were also down from 955 in 2022 to 804 last year. Meanwhile, the city saw an 11% increase, though, in the rate of property larceny. Mayor Mike Duggan says while the drop in violent crime is, of course, good, the goal is to keep that up.
What we have to do is prove in 2024 we can lower it again. And we're just getting started on things like the Community Violence Initiative and in a number of other programs, that what we want to do is build on the success and bring the violence down again next year.
So what is behind this record decrease, and what can the city do to continue that trend? Joining me tonight is Police Chief James White. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
So, by any definition, this is good news. Of course, the direction we want to see things moving in. Top things that you think are behind that number coming down?
Well, first and foremost, the community. The community, in large part, is heavy supporters of this police department. They're sick of the violence, they're sick of the crime, and they're working with us on solutions to it, to both the violence, the crime, and working with the police department.
Yeah. So
second, I'm sorry. Second to that is, apologize for that. Second to that is our officers, just amazing police officers. The men and women of the Detroit Police Department do an incredible job.
All right. So those numbers are significant. I mean, decades since there's been a drop like that. It is still a disturbingly high number, especially when you compare it to similarly sized cities. Mm-hmm. It's on par with some cities that are much larger than Detroit. So how do we get that number down, and what do you think is a realistic goal for that homicide rate to be? Yeah, well,
a realistic goal for me is to continue to drive down the number with the cooperation of the community, the officers, the deployment, our 12-point plan. We're certainly not celebrating 252 homicides. I mean, that's way too many, as you indicated, for a city our size. 252 homicides, in my opinion, are 252 too many. Mm-hmm. Is it realistic to anticipate a zero homicide rate in Detroit? Absolutely not. But that's the goal, right? You want to work with your community. You want to deploy effectively. You want to have a community strategy that involves crime prevention. You want to stop the crimes before they happen. So it's a lot of work. We're up for the challenge, but it's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah. Are there specific techniques, specific relationships between officers and in specific neighborhoods where you're pointing to that and saying that's why those numbers are down?
You know, it's a multi-layered approach. I mean, you have to look at everything. You start with the officers. They're amazing. I say it often. I've got the best police department in the United States of America. Now they got a $10,000 raise that brought a lot of them back and certainly give them a competitive wage. We've got a mayor who used to be a prosecutor, so we're in a great position. Having conversations about crime prevention with a former prosecutor is a different conversation than with a typical mayor who may not understand at the level that he does. We've got a high engagement from a U.S. attorney, the highest I've seen in my 28 years. Don Isom is a resident of the city of Detroit, or grew up in the city of Detroit, returned to the city of Detroit to be the U.S. attorney for this region, but certainly the One Detroit initiative has a very strong imprint on what's happened with our crime reduction. And the court systems are up and running again. So there's a number of different factors that's leading to these reductions and this success.
Talking about that backlog being cleared?
That backlog was amazing. And the work that's come out of 36th District Court has been amazing. The work that has come out with regards to the reduction in the backlog. I was about to say Recorder's Court, but I'm showing my age, so you got to forgive me. But our district court and our circuit court have worked very well together in reducing their backlogs. So, you know, there's a layered approach to this. Our Wayne County Executive Warren Evans has been to the table. Again, someone who used to be a police chief, someone who was a sheriff, the Wayne County Sheriff Department. So it's not just the Detroit Police Department, it's and the Detroit Police Department. It's the great work of the men and women of the Detroit Police Department, and we're up for the challenge to bring these numbers in even lower next year, or this year.
if you look around the country, some cities, major cities, did see those crime numbers go up, but many saw them go down. So there is a bit of a nationwide trend. However, just a few years ago, 2020, we saw a lot in a lot of major cities. Detroit was kind of insulated from some of that. So going forward, how do you think Detroit can be insulated from those national trends and tides?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we look at data all the time. But what we did identify is the fact that, our numbers are lower than our pre-COVID numbers. What you're seeing in a lot of the major cities around the country is they're returning to a normalized state of what they were before COVID.
Yeah.
COVID really upset everything, and all the normalization of data changed because the world changed with regards to COVID. So what you're seeing now is that resetting that's happening, where people are returning to what happened before COVID. Our numbers, we're seeing some numbers that are significantly lower than before COVID, and so that's kind of where we look to see if our plans and strategies are working. How do you continue that? Well, I talked about it. It's the relationships, it's the officers. Certainly, it's the work that we're doing with our neighborhood police officers, our community ambassadors. It's all of it. It's not one thing. We've got a CVI unit, our community violence interrupters, that are starting out, and early returns on that are very promising. So we're very excited about the opportunities that we have going forward. But again, we're not declaring victory. This is not a victory lap to say that we've solved this thing. But we're certainly encouraged by what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and to be fair, lower than pre-COVID, that should be applauded.
It should be, and the work continues. The reward for good work is more work. So
Sure.
we've got to all be ready to move forward.
What do you think it'll take for the average Detroiter to feel safer and to notice it? Because we went out there, we asked people, these numbers are significantly down. Does it feel safer? And it's hard for the individual to notice that on a family basis.
Yeah, well, we want them to feel that, and we want them to see that, and I hear from them as well, and some feel it. Some have been very complimentary of the work and say that I see more officers in the community, and we're all about the community. We could not be where we are without our community, and so certainly we're going to do more community engagement activities, whether it be the Walk a Mile Wednesdays that I do. We're going to do foot patrols this year. Our new officers, we have a program called Serve Then Protect. And that's officers in the community getting to know the residents of our community through foot beats. Get out of those cars, walk around and talk to our residents. So
why is that so important?
We are our community. We're the community in which we serve, and without them, we will not be successful. They have to feel important, they have to feel valued, and they have to feel heard, and they can't feel heard if you're not listening, right? So you have to get out there and you got to talk to them. You got to get your officers out of those scout cars. You got to go up to those porches and talk to folks. Whether you're passing out a gun lock or impounding an abandoned vehicle, you have to get out there and be engaged.
How is the department itself doing? What's morale like, recruiting?
Well, recruiting is great. Morale is up. I measure morale by performance. I mean, morale is one of those things that it's a constant struggle to keep it up, and it has ebbs and flows to it. Overwhelmingly, I think morale is good. We've got $10,000 raises for our officers. That certainly helps morale. I can see officers coming back to the department. We've had over 40 officers return from other agencies, and an additional 18 or so come back to the department from various sources, and not just from other law enforcement agencies. So about 60 cops are back and on the street. We're looking at to hire another 100 to 125 this summer. And they're going to be out there on the street. They're going to be right out of the academy, in our neighborhoods, patrolling our parks, patrolling our neighborhoods. And that's a boost to morale as well, to have backup out there for our officers who are working very hard. So I think that the morale is up. I think that the sustainability of this is there, and I think that our community is ready for it.
How would you describe the relationship and the level of trust between the community and the department? Though we did note it wasn't quite the same as a few years ago in many cities.
Yeah. That's a daily responsibility. We all bear the burden of having this strong relationship with our community, and it's something that you can lose overnight. One bad decision by one officer can impact community trust. So we have to stay out front. We have to be transparent. We have to continue to engage our community. When we get it right, we're going to support our officers. When we get it wrong, we're going to be transparent about it. We're going to hold them accountable, and we're going to be out front about what happened. And policing excellence is a requirement for this agency.
On that transparency note, for those who don't know, you guys have announced a new policy to share body cam video from certain incidents. Give us a rundown of what that's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, we looked at best practices around the country. We looked at some agencies, we looked at Chicago, we looked at a couple other agencies. And basically what that equates to, if there is a critical use of force, which is not only an officer-involved shooting, but includes officer-involved shooting. Critical uses of force are those force incidents where have resulted in significant injury or death to a citizen. Within 45 days, we are going to release all the body camera video, the audio, and any other video assets that we may have regarding the incident. We're also going to provide a narrative to what occurred. We're going to give the 911 tapes and package it all together and provide it to the community and put it on our website, as well as release it to the media, so that the community can see what the officers were faced with when the incident happened.
Yeah, important step. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little football.
Yes.
We've got a playoff home game coming up. Is this just like any home game at Ford Field, or is this a different beast?
Well, it's not like any other home game. It's the first playoff game at Ford Field, so that's going to bring out everybody. That's going to bring out, you know, your 60,000 plus fans that are in the stadium. But we anticipate about another 20 to 30,000 people that just want to be close to it and get pictures. So we've got a good problem to have. We're going to have a lot of people downtown. We're used to this. You know, we did Taylor Swift, Beyonce, so we know what big crowds look like in our city. Everybody's excited. We anticipate tailgating is going to be super early, probably 6, 7 a.m., getting ready for the game, assuming a 1 o'clock kickoff. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we're planning. We're in a very positive, strategic mode. We're all excited for the team. Many Lions fans, including myself, are ready for this, so we'll be ready to go.
So between the playoff game and then the NFL draft coming up in just a few months, thousands of people are going to be pouring into the city, many from out of town. What are the main concerns with that? Is it just the silly stuff, the partying, the 6 a.m. tailgates, or is it more than that?
Well, it's more than that for us, right? You know, we have to plan, we have to have a strategy, we have to have a deployment based on data and information that we've learned. We've talked to partners from around the country that have hosted events, playoff games. We've hosted that have hosted drafts. So we know some of the nuances that we have to be prepared for. There's some things that you will see publicly that will be obvious, and there's some things that you won't see publicly that won't be as obvious, that will all be geared towards keeping everyone safe.
Can be greasing any poles or anything like that?
No, what we'll be doing is we'll certainly be out there. We'll have undercover officers out in the crowd. You know, crowd management is a very challenging concept. You have to manage the crowd by being in the crowd. And everyone knows what an officer is if an officer's standing there in uniform. But what you want to do is you want to be inside that crowd and gathering information on those who have nefarious intent, right? I mean, we want to make sure that anybody that wants to come down and have a good time and have a safe time, bring your family, we want to make sure that that happens and they have a good time and a good story to tell. But anyone that comes down with nefarious intent or want to do something illegal or harmful, we'll have a zero tolerance for that. And we're going to be unapologetic about arresting folks who are down there or anywhere in our city with that nefarious intent in mind. So we're hopeful that those folks who want to have a good time come down and have a great story to tell. And we're going to be ready for those who may choose to do otherwise.
All right, let's wrap up with a year from now, early 2025. We hope to have you back. What might we be talking about at that time? We're coming off a big election year in a swing state with numbers being down from 2023. What do you think the story will be a year from now?
Well, I don't do politics, so I will only stick to my role, and that's to be the police chief. And I'm hopeful, but hope isn't a strategy, as we've learned. We'll be prepared and rolling out our 2024 crime strategy. And I'm very encouraged by what I've seen, the partnerships that we'll be here again talking about, with a little prayer, even lower reductions, even more historic reductions next year this time.
Hope to see that. Chief White, thank you so much for coming by. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.